something that's a lot more important than it looks. Now, to the casual eye, this is a small-scale traffic jam and a bunch of folks just milling around. But what it looks like, to me, is actually a gaping hole in the Israeli embargo of Gaza. Barely a day since Israel's attack on the Gaza aid flotilla at sea that left at least 9 people dead, what we're now looking at here is the only border crossing in or out of Gaza that Israelis don't control. It's controlled by Egypt. And today they said, you know what? We're opening the gates. So apparently goods are now flowing into Gaza. And that's precisely what the Israelis were trying to prevent when they boarded that ship in international waters and opened fire. Here it is again. These are the pictures that have now been shown around the world. Well, now Israel's put out some video of their own, and watch this, because it does support what the Israeli ambassador to the United States was on this show telling me yesterday. He said, Rick, we weren't firing at them. We were using paintball guns, and they attacked us. Well, you know what? When you look at this video, he appears to be right. Now, granted, some of this video is that, look at that right there. That's an Israeli soldier being thrown overboard. We also saw video of Israeli soldiers. Look at them being hit with pipes there. So was this a situation where these soldiers ended up doing what it seems they had to do to save their own lives, that they were, in fact, in this situation, being attacked? I'll tell you, there's so many sides to this story, and it's so interesting, and it's being told all over the world. With me now is George Birnbaum. He's a former chief of staff to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Let me just start with this question. Has Israel and Prime Minister Netanyahu put himself in a situation now where, as a result of this action, Israel may have lost the moral ground in their argument over Gaza, for example?
Well, Israel is usually in a lose-lose situation when it comes to these kind of things. The Israeli intelligence had clear information as to the sponsorship of some of these boats within the flotilla, of which there were organizations that even appear on the Obama administration Treasury Department's watch list as terrorist organizations. In fact, they're designated as SDGTs, specially designated global terrorists. So one had to assume that the potential was that these activists were being used as shields or decoys for smuggling arms into Gaza. That's the whole point of the blockade. It's not to keep humanitarian aid from Gaza, but to keep arms from Gaza.
But the question is, did you, Mr. Birnbaum, speaking on behalf of Israel, did Israel overreach? Could they have done this in such a way so that they wouldn't have brought so much negation upon themselves? And listen, I understand that if you're a soldier and someone's coming at you with a pipe, you have the right to defend yourself. But these guys came in helicopters, commando style. Should Israel now be looking at this and saying, maybe we should rethink the way we did this? Maybe we should have kept a little more distance and warned these ships, this 6th ship in particular. Hold your answer to that question, because we got to get a break in.
Okay.
But I'm very interested in how you would respond to that, because it's a question, frankly, that's being asked by a lot of people on this day. Stay right there. More with George Birnbaum on this very important question about Israel in just a moment. This is Rick's List, your national conversation. We'll be right back. George Birnbaum is good to join us now. He's a former representative of Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. And the last question I think you heard many of you who are staying with us put this question on the table is there a possibility that, if not in intent, in procedure, Israel was wrong in the way they went about this? Because a commando-style raid on this 6th ship looks to the rest of the world like it was overreaching, over the top.
You know, going in with commandos armed with paintball guns, I don't think could be qualified as overreaching. I was in Israel all last week, and the leading story in the news was this pending flotilla. And the Israeli government had issued numerous warnings not to try and run the blockade. Come to the port in Ashdod, let us inspect the cargo. If indeed it is humanitarian, we will let all the goods enter into Gaza.
Are you dealing, is the Israeli government going to deal with the fact that there are people now being detained, some of which are civilians, some of which may have every single right in the world to have been on that ship?
I think there's a history of terrorist organizations using civilians as decoys. If in fact most of these people, and I think they were innocent civilians, they absolutely should be released and led on their way.
Do you believe this was a clear provocation?
Absolutely.
They wanted to do this because they wanted to get almost a propaganda advantage on Israel?
You know, it's a bitter pill for Israel. Had they run the blockade successfully or been allowed to get to Gaza, it would have been a success. Had the ship been sunk, it would have been a success. This was a success. In their minds, any outcome was a success.
But didn't Israel play into their hand? And I know we're getting into a public relations argument here, and these are matters that are more important than public relations.
Absolutely.
But there's a right way to handle things and a wrong way to handle things. And can you go back and scratch your head now and say, you know, we just got used?
Again, Israel's in a very unfortunate position. They have to make sure that weapons are not being brought into Gaza.
But weapons weren't on this ship.
Well, they weren't sure. The people who sponsored this particular ship are designated terrorist organizations.
You say Israel has a right to know. After all, they're going to Hamas and, to Gaza. Gaza's led by Hamas. Hamas is an organization that says it still wants Israel destroyed and doesn't believe Israel should exist.
Exactly right.
So that's the argument you use to say anything going over there, we want to know what it is.
Just make sure it's not going to be used as weapons of terror against Israeli citizens.
Is Israel doing everything it needs to do to make sure there's some kind of peace solution, or are both sides so stalemated on this thing that's just never going to come? I'm changing to a micro conversation.
Yeah, well, macro conversation. The problem is the bifurcation between the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. On the West Bank, with Mahmoud Abbas and the Palestinian Authority, there's been a lot of progress
Correct.
made. The problem is in Gaza, you have an organization that wants the destruction of the state of Israel as part of their mandate. They're a terrorist organization, recognized by the world as a terrorist organization.
So you just won't play with them?
Can't play with them.
One last thing. Here's the United Nations Council measure they just put out last night. We'll just go over a couple of quick things before I let you go here. Security Council deeply regrets the loss of life and injuries resulting from this use of force. It says the Council in this context condemns those acts which resulted in the loss of at least 10 civilians. It goes on to say that there should be an independent commission to study this. Speaking on behalf of Israel, if you are, is this a castigation? Do you see this as a castigation?
You know,
because, by the way, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton just came on before we went on the air and says she agrees with this that the UN has put out.
You know, Israel is pretty used to castigation for the United Nations. This is pretty
tame?
Pretty tame by UN standards for resolutions against the State of Israel. I think the State of Israel will welcome an independent investigation. It'll be shown that the commandos entered peacefully, 5 of the 6 ships, there were no incidents. This ship, we went in with paintball guns without any intent for harm and were brutally attacked. These soldiers were brutally attacked. I think an independent investigation will prove Israel correct.
George Birnbaum, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
All right. By the way, we've got a lot more to talk about in just a little bit regarding